You've probably been told to raise your vibration at one point or another. Like if something feels off or heavy or stuck, you need to get in that higher state, feel better, think better, shift your energy. And even like sometimes for a moment that works, you feel more open, clear, maybe you feel more connected, like something finally clicked. But I see this over and over again. And even with myself, something happens, right? And you drop right back into it. The same patterns, the same emotions, that same tension. And then you start thinking, I can't hold a high vibration. So I'm never going to manifest the life I want. But I'm going to propose a question. What if that's not the problem? What if you were never actually meant to stay there? Because the way that high vibration is being taught completely ignores how anything actually becomes real, not just spiritually, but physically too. And we live in a physical world, and most everything we're trying to manifest is in 3D. So I'm going to give you an analogy. Let's look at water. Water exists in three phases, right? You have ice, you have liquid, you have vapor. It's the same substance. Nothing's added to it, nothing's taken away. The only thing that changes in between those phases is vibration, how fast those molecules are moving, that frequency, right? So when vibration increases, molecules move faster and they break apart from a rigid solid structure. They spread out, they expand. That's vapor. And when vibration decreases, that's when it slows down. Everything comes closer together and you lock in a solid structure. That's ice. And then you have that phase in between, which is liquid. And I know people are saying there are 5 phases to water. We're just keeping it basic for the metaphor. Liquid is where bonds are constantly forming and breaking at the same time, right? It's not fully structured, but it's not completely free and expansive either. It's responsive, it's adaptive, it moves, it reorganizes in real time. That's what flow is. So you might hear flow state. We're going to get into that a little more later too. So when you go into this high vibrational state, what's really happening is your internal structure loosens. So you're not locked into the same identity or the same patterns or the same way of thinking. Your conditions, your situations, your circumstances aren't at that state. That's why you feel more open. That's why ideas come in. You get inspiration. You have that intuition. It's the higher self, whatever you want to call it. That becomes accessible in that expansive state. And that's the vapor when we're talking about the metaphor of water. But vapor doesn't build anything. It doesn't bring anything solid into the 3D world. And if we only had vapor, like there would be no life because it's expansive, but there's no actual structure there. So what happens when that energy, that insight, that awareness has to come back down into reality? What is the process that has to happen there? It has to condense. The vibrations have to slow. It has to condense into that liquid form. So the liquid form, it's referred to as the waters of life, and there's a reason for that. Why, right? Why are we baptized by water? Well, without getting too deep, because I can go really deep on all of these concepts, believe me, but it's because this is the first place that consciousness or spirit can actually enter movement in the 3D world and become something. So that is a symbol of that process. Flow state is this middle phase, and it represents emotions and it represents experiments. And this is where you're trying things, you're adjusting, you're reacting, you're noticing patterns, you're feeling those emotions. And this is where it's inconsistent. This phase can be inconsistent because bonds are constantly breaking and forming. So it's not actually that materialized, solid 3D structure yet. And like I said, sometimes we call this flow state, right? It's like things are working and moving and aligning and like there's all these pieces in motion. But if you don't understand this process, it can also feel like friction. It can feel like I'm triggered, I'm reactive, I'm frustrated. You're trying to control things, right? In that state when it needs to be able to move and flow. So it can feel like friction, even though it is this flow state, if you understand the process. So friction and flow, not two different states. It's the liquid phase. It's the same phase. And that's, again, because these things are constantly forming and breaking apart at the same time. So you're not the old version of you anymore, but you're not that fully new version of you either. Your structure is reorganizing, and it's trying to test all the ways that it can form bonds that work or don't work. And emotion is part of that process. So the frustration that comes with that, the anger, the pressure you feel, that's not you being in low vibration, the way that people talk about it. That's energy interacting with patterns that you're still trying to hold in place. So it's literally showing you where something hasn't reorganized yet and trying to get you to test other bonds and other ways that that structure can form. And that's what really allows change to happen. Because if you stay in that phase long enough, if you keep moving with it, if you don't bypass it, you keep experimenting, you don't force yourself back up into those higher feelings of good, something actually will start to stabilize when that movement slows down. And that's happening because a pattern is becoming consistent, right? You've tested all these bonds and you figure out the ones that are going to hold to be able to manifest something solid in reality. And this is where we get to ice, right? This is our solid 3D structure. It's where something actually becomes real in the world. So it can look like a way of being that doesn't collapse the second something challenges it. And again, that's manifestation. That's where we slow down that vibration. We take this high, infinite, expansive vibration and we slow it down enough to create in us, it's ice and water, but in us, it's an identity. And your identity doesn't always feel like high vibration. It feels slower, more defined, more solid in this world. And here's the part that no one talks about when they talk about staying in a high vibrational state forever. It doesn't stop there either, because energy doesn't stop moving. So when people use low vibration versus high vibration, it's not just what you're feeling, it's this entire process that has to happen for us to be constantly creating. So you're in the solid state, an ice cube, right? And more energy is introduced into that system and it forces you to expand again. And when something new enters, that solid structure can't hold in the same way anymore. And you see this, you can see this with ultrasound, right? You bombard a cell with a high vibration or a high frequency, and it actually breaks apart. So as your vibration increases, molecules start moving faster again, and these bonds start breaking. That structure, that identity destabilizes again. And that's heat, that's pressure, that's fire, that element that is desire, right? That is passion, that wants you to move towards something else. And what was solid melts back into a liquid, back into this flow state, back into the middle phase where everything is moving. Only going back up that chain, there's a different issue because you're trying to reorganize and more energy has been put into that system, but you can't go back down into the solid state. You broke the container, you broke the identity. It cannot hold that extra energy. So you're forced to expand again into this vapor. And once you expand, you get back into that access of insight, of inspiration, back into something new. And so then that whole process starts all over again. And it's not a straight line, it's a cycle. I mean, if you watched anything on my channel, you understand that everything is a cycle. These are the fractals that we repeat in reality. Expansion into vapor, condensation into liquid, stabilization into a solid. Then fire comes in. This is your baptism by fire. Fire takes that solid identity, that 3D person that you think you are, and it breaks it apart and moves it back up through liquid, back into this expansive, higher vibrational state again, so that you can gather more insight, information, and reform a new identity, a new structure that is more in line with this higher being that you're becoming. So water forms a structure, fire breaks it. And one creates reality, the other one breaks your current reality and forces you to evolve. And you are constantly moving through life, through this cycle in life. It's both. So no, you are not meant to stay at a high vibrational state. You are meant to gather the energy, insight, inspiration from that state and bring it down to this lower vibrational state. And then when you gain more experience, more insight, more interaction, more connection with this 3D world, and energy enters that system, it breaks apart your identity, and you have to go back up to that bigger state to say, okay, what now? And bring that down. This is the evolution of consciousness. This is the evolution of manifesting and materializing things in the world. And you're constantly moving through this cycle, through both, right? It's infinite. Again, it's not about staying in that high vibration, because if you stayed there, nothing would ever form. That's where we get into the fantasy. You stay in the fantasy, and you don't actually ever create anything in the world. And it's not about avoiding what feels like low, because that's where things actually become real. It's understanding this process and learning to love this entire process and where you're at in it. Are you expanding? Are you in the middle? Are you reorganizing things? Are you at that phase where you're stabilizing something new? Are you under pressure right now? Do you have that fire underneath you and you know that something's going to break soon? Something's going to break in the reality and you're going to have to build something else. All of those are required. You don't manifest in one state. Nothing is created in this world through one thing. It is created through the interplay of all of the plethora of states that we are able to be in and go through, all of the emotions. And I'll tell you this, that is not a failure. That is how anything real is created. And I want to say this as well. There is this polarity out there too that says, if you stay in that high vibrational state, then you're going to attract high vibrational things, right? If you stay in a place of like love and forgiveness and abundance and all these things, that's what's going to be mirrored back to you. So let me ask you this. If that's the truth, that one thing is the truth, that one perception is the truth, why do we have the other perception that opposites attract? And I'm going to explain this to you. I wasn't planning on putting this in the end of this video, but I feel like I have to say something about it. When you look at the story of any high vibrational, like let's take Jesus, religious or not, like let's take Jesus for an example. Jesus was in a high vibrational, high conscious state, a high state of forgiveness and love. Did he attract high vibrational people? No, a lot of times he attracted the broken, the weak, the hurt. Because when you're in that state, sure, you do attract other people in that state, but you also attract the opposite. So we have to stop saying that you just, once you're in a high vibration, then everything high vibration is going to come to you. No, you're going to get the bandwidth of this human experience. Why did Jesus attract those type of people? Because his vibration was high enough to be able to hold that and to pull them into that energy. So please, for the love of God, stop forcing yourself to be in a high vibrational state all the time, because you're gaslighting this process. What it means to be in that state of alignment and embodiment is feeling the love for every piece of this process. Feeling the love for the destruction, feeling the love for the recreation, feeling the love for the part where your identity is breaking down and trying to reform and you're experimenting on who you need to be or what you want to do. Feeling the love, yes, in that expansive state of intuition and vibration. But it's about feeling the whole cycle and holding that appreciation, love, and understanding through the entire thing, instead of disconnecting and getting caught in one, and instead of separating one phase is good and the other phase is bad. One phase is going to get you what you want and the other phase isn't. It's not polar. It's not a failure if you're in a lower vibrational state right now. You are just in a different phase and you will move. Energy does not stay stagnant for very long. And if you're trying to hold it in a stagnant state, you're actually using a ton of energy doing that. It takes a lot to not let this cycle happen, to not let these flows happen. Sometimes it takes more energy to try to hold it in one phase instead of letting it flow, letting the process do what it's supposed to do. And part of loving that process is having faith that what you're going through is going to get you to that next place where you need to be.